Right. All right, members. I'm going to call the committee back to order. Are the mics on? Just to remind staff, when I say a time, I actually mean it. Art, the mics are on?
This could change the vote, Mr. Chair.
Members, what we're going to do, and I'm going to have Mr. Gehring explain it so when it's recorded we know exactly what we're about to do. I'm going to make a motion to suspend the rules. To be clear, that motion will probably have to be done by a roll call vote, so it'll be a yea or nay vote. Once the rules are suspended, then the next motion will be, and I'm going to make sure that Mr. Gehring has it, will be to forward the names of all three. That's going to have to be a roll call vote, just to be clear. So, I move to suspend the rules. The clerk will take the roll.
Bonoff.
Aye.
Clausen.
Aye.
Eakin.
Aye.
Fishbach.
No.
Kent.
Aye.
Lori.
No.
Miller.
No.
Ortman.
No.
Peterson.
No.
Pratt.
No.
Sharon.
Aye.
Sparks.
Aye.
Torres Ray.
Aye.
Breinert.
Yes.
Dorholt. Fitzsimmons.
Aye.
Franzen.
Aye.
Gruenhagen.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Lien.
No.
Nornis.
No.
Norton.
Aye.
Poppy.
Aye.
Rosenthal.
Aye.
Swedzinski.
No.
Teese.
Aye.
Winkler.
No.
Pulowski.
Aye.
Talk about Congress.
I'm going to
Save the votes for both.
In the Senate, there are 7 ayes and 6 nays. And in the House, there are 11 ayes and 4 nays.
Yes.
Ayes have it.
Ayes have it, and the rules are suspended. My next motion will be to...
Mr.
I want to
Chair?
make sure if Mr. Gehring... I'm sorry, sir.
Mr. Chair?
Senator Fishbach.
Could you explain a little bit better? We suspended the rules only for the purpose of making a recommendation of all three?
Yes.
Okay.
Forwarding all three.
No recommendation.
No recommendation.
It's
Forwarding.
No recommendation, so all three would proceed.
So the motion would be no recommendation. And Mr. Chair, is it appropriate for the chair to be making motions? Is that generally how the House does it?
Chair's a member of the committee. Anyone can make a motion.
But generally, you hand over you turn over the gavel when your motion is under consideration. And I will not submit any formal issue, but I just was wondering about that.
Senator Fishbach, I've only been here 27 years. I've seen chairs make motions and members make motions. As long as you're a member of the committee, you may make a motion.
And Mr. Chair,
Fishbach.
I appreciate your long service, but I was just checking because that is traditionally not the way it's handled.
Senator Fishbach, I guess we have two houses with different traditions, but I have to operate under the traditions of the House that I'm serving in. Senator Ortman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With respect, I hope that we will take another vote before we vote to make no recommendation.
So, Senator Ortman, are you making a motion then that's a formal motion to take another roll call vote on the remaining two candidates in the 5th District?
Yes, Mr. Chair, if a motion is required, then I'd like to make that motion. I'm hoping that folks have given this some consideration over the the break, and we may have a result.
All right, discussion to the motion. Representative Winkler.
Well, Mr. Chair, I would just like to remind members of the committee that the 5th Congressional District did meet and recommend a candidate. There are 2 members of this joint committee who are members of the 5th Congressional District, Senator Torres Ray and I. And all of you who represent different congressional districts may have regents who are selected at different times in the future by your congressional districts and are dealt with in a similar manner to the way this joint committee tonight is dealing with the recommendation of the 5th Congressional District. So for those of you concerned about particular candidates in greater Minnesota and so forth, just keep in mind that other parts of the state may treat your candidates differently in the future based on what we do tonight.
Further discussion. Senator Torres Ray.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Winkler, thank you so much for saying that. We did spend considerable time, Mr. Chair and members, not only reviewing the resumes, but also interviewing them again. So this is, we have spent considerable time in our district and have had conversations about this. So this was an important vote for the members of the 5th Congressional District who submitted the recommendation, and I believe that we were never told the margin of difference, but there was sufficient support for the recommendation that came from the 5th Congressional District.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Bonner.
Mr. Chair and members, that is the basis of my recommendation and my vote was I do believe in that process, and I was asked by by every candidate who I would support, and I was clear that as chair it would be, the will of the people, and so I just did want to echo that. And I understand everybody has an equal vote, and so while it may be the request of the 5th District members to honor their selection, it is also important that we all know we each have a vote.
Senator Ortman.
Well, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to echo what Senator Bonoff has said. I respect the fact that the 5th Congressional has met, but this group in this room tonight has been tasked with making a recommendation, and a recommendation to both chambers. And I think that we should do that, and I think that we are still able to do that with further consideration and deliberation. I'm hopeful that we will do that and not leave this issue open to these bodies.
Further discussion. Seeing no further discussion on the Ortman motion that we would take another roll call vote on the 2 remaining candidates in the 5th District, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
Motion prevails. Clerk will take the roll.
Bonoff.
Aye. Oh, I'm sorry. Lucas. Lucas.
Clausen.
Win.
Eakin.
Lucas.
Fishbach.
Win.
Kent.
Lucas.
Lori.
Lucas.
Miller.
Win.
Ortman.
Win.
Peterson.
Win.
Pratt.
Win.
Sharon.
Lucas.
Sparks.
Lucas.
Torres Ray.
Lucas?
Pulowski.
Lucas.
Breinert.
Lucas.
Dorholt. Fitzsimmons. Franzen.
Win.
Gruenhagen.
Win.
Johnson.
Lucas.
Lien.
Lucas.
Nornis.
Win.
Norton.
Lucas.
Poppy.
Lucas.
Rosenthal. Swedzinski.
Win.
Teese.
Win.
Winkler.
That's it.
Mr. Chair, in the House, Peggy Lucas received 9 votes, and Dennis Nguyen received 6 votes. In the Senate, Peggy Lucas received 7 votes, Dennis Nguyen received 6 votes.
Seeing that a majority of the votes have been cast for Peggy Lucas will be recommended by the Joint Committee to the Joint Convention. Congratulations. We finished with this one.
I was impressed with that. That was very nice.
Mr. Gehring, on that phone.
I didn't think that this could happen.
All right, members, we suspended the rules only for that vote. We are again operating under the rules, so it's clear to everyone that we're back to having a majority of each of the two bodies as we proceed with the next series of candidates. So we now have the students at large, and if they, I'm sorry, students.
At large.
Wait a second, hold it. It says students, on this sheet, it's got student at large coming up. You want the at-large next? All right. We'll have the at-large candidates next. If they would all come down.
Did you want me to switch now?
Want to switch?
Every half hour, right? Right. At-large candidates.
Would all the
Chair.
at-large candidates come down, please?
Mr. Chair.
The agenda.
Members, I'm working off the agenda that's before me, but the rules say the students should be next. So we're going to have the students come next.
Thank you.
So students, the chair was correct initially. I think I'll just stay here for a bit. Okay, students, come on down. We have 3 students. And if we do this in alphabetical order, we have Mr. Covello is first.
Cavillo.
I'm sorry?
Cavillo.
Cavillo.
Thank you.
Excuse me. And the timer is going.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, and members of the committee. Hello again to many of you. To those of whom I have not been able to meet with, I will offer a quick history of myself. I am currently enrolled in the University of Minnesota Twin Cities campus as an undergraduate in my second year of study. I'm majoring in journalism with a focus on strategic communication. I'm interested in pursuing a career in advocacy or nonprofit communications. I'm enrolled in the University Honors Program, and I participate in recruitment efforts via work at the Office of Undergraduate Admissions. I hold a part-time position at the university libraries. I'm also currently serving on a search committee for a top-level administrative position of Vice Provost for Student Affairs and Dean of Students, as one of 2 undergraduate members on the committee. I also hold a position within a student group on campus as treasurer for the American Indian Student Cultural Center, as I am a Native American student on campus. I'm from Illinois and have been in Minnesota for about 1.5 years now. I consider Minnesota my home. I voted here in the fall, and I will be filing my income taxes as a resident. I bring with me a vast breadth and depth of knowledge about the university and what it offers to its students. After all, most of my job at admissions is simply to know as much as possible about what we have to offer students. My close ties to several communities on campus allow me an informed and varied perspective, which would be extremely valuable to the Board of Regents, as most members, if they have attended the university, have not done so in quite a few years. While the student representatives to the board do work to inform members of the student perspective, it is imperative that the voting body has at least one member with insight to the campus environment, as it has changed a lot, especially within the last 10 years, as a new focus has been put towards undergraduate education and the division into 7 freshman and mini colleges on the Twin Cities campus. I feel that there is a disconnect between students at the University of Minnesota and the Board of Regents and the state legislature. I believe that having an undergraduate student as a member of the Board of Regents is one way to start lessening that disconnect. Support the U Day, the rally and lobbying day organized by the Minnesota Student Legislative Coalition, brought hundreds of University of Minnesota students to the Capitol representing all of our campuses. The small group of activists, the Legislative Coalition, with a passion, or this small group with a passion for working for University of Minnesota and their fellow students, and they made that day happen. In my opinion, though, the reason it was not thousands of students is because many do not believe that we have the power to affect what goes on. Let me prove them wrong. As a regent, my main focuses would be to increase accessibility to the university, to act as a model institution for the rest of the country, and to increase accountability with regard to administrative costs. The cost of attendance, of course, is a facet of accessibility that is gaining the most attention. Tuition, being the main concern, has risen sharply, and the university needs to make sure that it is being as effective as possible and as responsible as possible with the tuition dollars it gets from students. As a current student, I thank you, members of the committee, for not going easy on the university. Of course, state allowances, a major form of the investment in the university, have also decreased sharply, as I'm sure you know, even though the investment, as President Kaler likes to advertise, has a 13-to-1 return. Accountability, or lack thereof, is raised as a defense for this decrease by some, and I agree that it is an extremely large issue, but I also think that President Kaler's operational excellence initiative is certainly a step in the right direction. Though, using his words again, it is a long journey. Balancing increased administrative costs and a lowered investment from the state is exactly the problem that I want to become involved with, specifically by serving as a regent. I'm thankful for having this opportunity, and I thank you for consideration.
Thank you very much. Abdul Omari.
Madam and Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I thank you for your time and service on the committee. Thank the staff for the work that you continue to do, those who care about the U, and for my family and continued support from family and friends. My name is Abdul Omari. I come as a young man born in South Minneapolis to a Jordanian mother and a Kenyan father who came here in the early 70s to pursue associate's degrees at MCTC. One finished a degree and one didn't, but they settled in South Minneapolis. My mom worked her way up the service industry in Denny's restaurant as a server for over 25 years and then gained general management when I was in high school. My father opened a small business where he was an electronics repairman and a wedding DJ. They raised children in South Minneapolis, from which I am the youngest. I had the opportunity to go through the Minneapolis public school system, attending South High School and then landing at the University of Minnesota for a Global Studies bachelor's degree, went on to get a master's degree at the Humphrey School of Public Affairs, and now I'm currently enrolled in an International Development Education doctoral program. While there, I had 3 opportunities to study abroad in 3 different countries, which were amazing opportunities. Also during my time, I had the opportunity to engage in leadership. During my undergraduate, I served as the vice president of the Black Student Union, the president of my fraternity, as well as a regional representative. Went on to be the vice president of the Public Affairs Student Association at the Humphrey Institute, and most recently had the opportunity to serve 2 years as one of 8 student representatives to the Board of Regents, and that term ended last May. One of the things that I've been engaging in lately is as a new board member for the Minnesota Red Cross, the Twin Cities area chapter, which has been a wonderful experience thus far. In the fall, I'll start my doctoral research, which is focused on mentoring and the ways in which youth-adult relationships impact educational outcomes for minorities, particularly thinking about West Africans, East Africans, and African Americans in the state, which is ever so important at this time, as we all know. If appointed to the board and this honorable duty, I'll come with 3 principles that will guide me. 1, students first. 2, access to students across the state of Minnesota. And 3, thinking about our land-grant mission. From those principles come 3 guiding questions. As we make decisions and implement policy, how do they impact students like me? Statistics tell you that I shouldn't be before you, that I shouldn't have matriculated through the University of Minnesota. I'm very proud that I've been able to, and proud of the people who have supported me and helped me to do so. So I want to know how they impact students like me and students across the state. 2, how do our decisions impact access? I was raised miles from the University of Minnesota, 15-minute drive. My first memory was freshman orientation. It's unacceptable. We can and we must do better, allowing access to talented students across the state. 3, we just celebrated our 150-year anniversary of the Land Grant Act. So how do our decisions impact that land grant? We need to think about ways in which we can work with the state rather than for. Research with the state rather than for. Teach with the state rather than for. And completing our tripartite mission, serve with the state rather than for. The land-grant mission has a commitment to all of Minnesota. It has a commitment to the increase in immigrants. It has a commitment to the demographics that will change in the future. We need to make decisions for everyone in the state of Minnesota thinking about our land grant. Even people who will never attend the University of Minnesota. People like my parents. I'm confident that I can be the candidate and the person to ask the tough questions about how everybody in the state of Minnesota will be impacted, and ask those questions while also providing insight and avenues for us to reach out to everyone in the state. I thank you for your time. I'm excited for the question portion, and I hope for your support.
Thank you very much. Christopher Tastad. Mr. Tastad.
Madam and Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Christopher Tastad. I want to say I appreciate the time to come and speak with you today. I'll do my best to be brief given our lead-in to the committee process here. So I will start out by first wanting to thank my family and friends that have come to both support and observe this process. My family made the trip out from Montevideo, and I think they'll be looking forward to a drive home this evening, hopefully in fine weather and good safety. So I also appreciate the supporters that have come to observe the process as well. Throughout this process, I've talked with all of you, introduced myself on some level, whether it be to a limited extent or to a further conversation. I've had conversations outside of this body with the legislature as a whole, understanding and looking for opportunities to give you as a voting member of this process to vet me as a candidate, and also to possibly build a relationship and move towards something of a working order in terms of an understanding and a fruitful relationship. So I won't touch very extensively on my background since I have talked with you to some extent, like I said, of that already. But I will say my current status is that I'm a master's student at the university studying biology. I do research in the Muscular Dystrophy Center there, and I've done so for about 5 years, having recently completed my undergraduate at the Twin Cities campus in biochemistry. And I hope to plan on going to medical school following that and supplement that research focus into my practice as a doctor. Looking at this process and understanding and having these conversations, what I've really come to learn and understand is that this role as a regent, and not just on the university level but in the legislative level here, is really about listening. Understanding that in talking with legislators, some of you have raised concerns, some of you have highlighted issues, some of you have asked questions, many of you have ultimately shown interest. And I think that reflects the importance of the university and ultimately the role that we serve as regents in addressing and seeking out those conversations. In doing so, I hope to make listening the forefront of what I do, put that at the fore. And this process, I feel already I've built an image of what you as legislators see as priorities for the university as it relates to your district specifically, but also to the state as a whole. I also see it as of vital importance in the event that I would be nominated to maintain those relationships in listening and understand that as a part of what I would do as a regent is to maintain an open ear and ultimately come with the consideration of what we can bring back to the university in matching the needs of the the state. In addition to that, I think listening is an important element on campus. Part of being a good regent means being an engaged regent. And there is a wide swath of constituencies. There's a wide range of individuals that the university needs to cater to and understand in terms of their needs. And the regents ultimately need to have a very broad scope of that. I feel my time on campus has been spent as one of listening to those needs. My time in leading the foundation of the Minnesota Student Legislative Coalition was one of building a broad understanding of not just on the Twin Cities campus but system-wide how students are affected in the legislative process and how policy decisions ultimately affect the lives and day-to-day pursuits of students and individuals on campus. In addition to that, I think that is reflected in the support that I've received from students, not just on the Twin Cities campus, but system-wide. I believe a letter was just passed out that was written by the student representatives to the Board of Regents who serve as non-voting liaisons to the board, where these individuals from all 5 campuses have shown their support and endorsed me as the student candidate, indicating that I would be able to best reflect those needs of students. And ultimately, over the past 3 years that I've been involved in this legislative process, I've identified shared priorities, things that both the legislature and the university see, and in the interest of the state, and I'd like to highlight how my background effectively meets those. The first would be a statewide perspective. My background coming from Montevideo and now living and working and going to school in the Twin Cities area is one, I think, of understanding regional contrast, understanding that there are discrepancies and needs that are different, and when the university is looking to take what is a collective statewide support and return that support back to the state, it needs to be considerate of how that impact is ultimately reaching and being most effective in every region that it can be. And I feel my perspective and experience coming from that is important. I think my experience as a researcher on campus doing biomedical research for the past 5 years is of value as well. Just to highlight, historically there has not been a student ever that has had a science background of physical sciences. And I feel that...
I just want you to wrap up, too.
Sure.
Thank you.
Gladly. That this is of great importance as well. In doing so, my vision for the university is one that fulfills and exceeds the expectations of its core mission, one that is accountable to students and the public's trust that it's investing in the university, one where accessibility and affordability stand as the top priorities for the university, and one of a university that ultimately meets the needs of Minnesota. So I will yield and wait for questions.
Thank you very much. Members, questions for our students. And again, you know, words cannot express the talent and the appreciation we have for the caliber of candidate before us. So thank you very much. Any questions? I think the lack of questions reflects the work that you all put in ahead of time in terms of your spending time with each of the members of the committee. So we thank you for that. Oh, was there a question? Okay, very good. Representative Poppy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't think we can let them off the hook.
I thought you were going to.
So, this is a 6-year term. Each of you are at different points in your educational career. So I just wanted you to, perhaps you talked about it when you gave your introduction, but if you would just talk about how this is going to impact your life if you were to be elected to the region.
Mr. Cupview.
Thank you. So like I said, I'm in my second year of study right now, so I mean I would serve the first 2.5 years of the 6-year term as an undergraduate member, undergraduate student at the Twin Cities campus. For myself, I even kind of before deciding to run for the Board of Regents, I had decided that Minnesota definitely provides a good home for young professionals. Specifically the Twin Cities, especially Minneapolis, was named by Forbes as the best place for young professionals. So I was already planning on being here, very much so. Grad school is an idea, but definitely not something that I want to commit to yet. Could be in the works. But for me, as far as how, so I definitely spent the first 2.5 years of my term again as a regent, as an undergrad student. I guess I definitely could balance it. I've always kind of been one that's juggling a lot of things, and say I have experience with it. I currently balance 2 jobs, search committee, school, and a student group, and I definitely feel that I can add this on. Now, some things will probably have to go, but I feel that this service is worth what I would have to sacrifice to make it work.
Thank you. Mr. Omari.
Madam Chair, members, I always tell people that Minnesota is the place where dreams come true. And so I have 2 more years left as a student. Before I will graduate, I have to write a dissertation. So that will probably take me at least 2 years collecting data and then writing, and plan to settle down here and work with the communities with which I've been researching or will be researching for my dissertation.
Chairs, Representative Poppy. My status, so I just recently started a master's degree. I'll have about 2 years going into that, and I currently have the intention of going to medical school. Granting the acceptance of the University of Minnesota, I would then be a student of medicine for the next 4 years following. So there's a hypothetical situation where I would be a student for all 6 years of that term. In addition to that, I guess addressing the other side of this coin with the question in balancing and making this a part of our lives. I guess I really feel that this role and what we're doing here is asking ourselves what priority do we put this on, and of what importance do we set with that, and how do we approach the role in light of that. And I would say that being a top priority, you would meet the role and the commitment to that with a semblance of that commitment as well. Meaning, for me, being a top priority, it becomes a level of engagement, making a commitment to regularly visiting the coordinate campuses, making a commitment to regularly engage a wide variety of constituencies on campus, and understand that it's important to reach out to individuals that not only reflect your personal experience, but also reflect a wide diversity of perspectives, and then take into consideration that we want to balance that against our time at school.
Mr. Omari has requested an additional follow-up. Mr. Omari.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Representative Poppy, I didn't answer the second part of your question. During my 2 years as a student representative to the board, I had a glimpse, a very tough glimpse of what it is like to be a regent, but by no means was I serving that role, of course. So I know the time commitment outside of meetings, as well as during the meetings and preparation and things like that. And then during my time as chair of the student representatives, my role was to convene the 8 representatives as well. So I'm well aware of that time commitment and absolutely committed 100% to it. So thank you.
Representative Swedzinski.
Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, questions to all three of you. Minnesota has a diverse economy. Agricultural being a big part of that. Just kind of what's your background when it comes to agriculture, agricultural exploits, business within the state? Thanks.
Mr. Cavillo.
Thank you. I personally do not have much experience with agriculture as an industry. I grew up definitely in a small town that was surrounded by farmers and very much a farming community. In no way am I a city boy from Chicago. That being said, again, I have no personal experience with farming.
Thank you. Mr. Omari.
Madam Chair, Representative Swedzinski, I don't have firsthand experience with farming, but as far as we think about the research enterprise at the U, I served on the committee search as a committee member for the search for the Vice President of Research, who just took office in January. And so having that relationship with the Vice President for Research, and as we think about the research enterprise, whether it's agriculture or otherwise at the university, I think that relationship will serve well as we begin to think about how we provide agriculture advancement and things like that. So,
Mr. Tasted.
Chairs, Representative Swedzinski. I have a connection to agriculture through my father. He works as part of the dairy industry for a company called American Milk Producers Incorporated. He will very soon be ending that time with them as a result of AMPI closing the plant that's located in Dawson. I think in terms of being connected with agriculture, this is not only a very direct connection with the understanding of the industry as it stands, but also the result of that plant closing and the impact that it has on my surrounding community. Very much is a direct impact of the result of peripheral effects in the industry. So not only do I see the importance of agriculture as an element within the state's economy, but also see the social effects that stand when certain elements of the industry are off balance. To answer the other element of your question, in terms of the diversity of the economy, I feel in addition to that, I not only recognize the importance of the other facets of when you look to something like the metro area being considered the medical device mecca of the United States, can not only highlight the importance of that, but can also look at my personal experience as a researcher on the ground in the biomedical enterprise at the university and be able to ultimately relate that to not just how we see that as an important element of the university, but actually how large downstream effects are going to impact what's happening on the ground for those individuals in their day-to-day pursuits.
Very good. Senator Torres-Ray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Would like to hear from the students about their perspective related to income and what they have had to do to support themselves and to go through school. What we hear in our hearings in the Higher Education Committee as well as K-12 is that students' families cannot afford to go to college right now, and that we need a voice here and everywhere on behalf of students who have to take loans and work in order to support their education. Could you briefly touch on your personal experience and what you bring as a student from personal experience to the board?
We'll start this time, Mr. Tastet. Mix it up.
Chairs, Senator Torres-Ray, I appreciate this question. Being the student representative or student candidates, it's very much at the heart of what we ultimately bring to the board in terms of perspective. My current status is that I have shared costs with my parents, so both them and myself have taken on debt in order to pay for my schooling. I currently stand at $37,000 worth of debt as I move through my graduate career. And in order to pay for that, I maintained 3 jobs throughout my undergraduate career, and currently have one job outside of my own personal business that I maintain. Those 3 jobs were one, my laboratory experience. I was fortunate enough to receive grants and receive funding, externally sourced funding, to produce my research and work in that context. My second job was as a teaching assistant, where I worked in an integrated biology lab and taught CBS majors in line with group-based operation. And I believe you members of the committee actually had an opportunity to see this in the student teaching or science and teaching and student services building, I believe, STSS. And my third job was actually as a part of student government, where I received a small stipend for my service as a member of the leadership in student government.
Mr. Omari.
I'll come this way. Thank you, chairs, members. I have been working since it was legal for me to work, and maybe even a little earlier than that if you consider going to DJ weddings with my father. So during undergraduate, I worked at Macy's. I worked at T-Mobile, and then I received a small stipend from the Black Student Union as vice president. During my master's, I held a graduate research assistantship, which pays a stipend. And currently, I teach an undergraduate course as a part of a graduate instructor role, and then I also work in the Office for Public Engagement, and that totals about 25 hours a week. And since 2007, I've been working at the Varsity Theater as a bartender part-time on the weekends. And so I've maintained 3 jobs essentially throughout my entire undergraduate, master's, and into my doctoral degree. I currently hold, and say this actually on the low end of things to be where I'm at, about $22,000 in debt, and hope to hopefully keep it there and not continue to rise over the next 2 years. But who knows what will happen. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cavillo.
Thank you. So I'm 19. If you count being a newspaper carrier, I've been working for 9 years of my life. No, but I became part-time employed at 16, and I haven't been unemployed since. I began working the second week that I was at the University of Minnesota, and I currently hold 2 jobs, as I said before, and I don't make it 2 jobs just for the fun of it. I come from a family of 7 children, and they're working very hard to put all 7 of us through school with whatever support they can provide. It's currently a mix of merit-based scholarships, help from my parents, and then taking on student debt myself. I'm set to graduate with right about the average student debt of about $25,000. So I definitely know what it's like. These are especially, however, this discussion is especially kind of dear to me, and especially with my experience in the American Indian Student Cultural Center. There's a lot of students who always talk to me about where they come from and the different things that stop them or their friends from being able to attend when they want to. So, thank you.
All right. Very good. So with that sobering information, we're both inspired by you, but also disturbed that it's so difficult. I think we're ready to vote. I don't see any more questions. So. Clerk, take the roll.
Bonoff.
Abdul Omari.
Clausen.
Tasted.
Eakin.
Tasted.
Fishbach.
Omari.
Kent.
Omari.
Lori.
Tasted.
Miller.
Omari.
Ortman.
Omari.
Peterson.
Omari.
Pratt.
Senator Pratt, you've just been called on to vote.
Thank you. Omari.
Sharon.
Omari.
Sparks.
Tasted.
Torres Ray.
Omari.
Pulowski.
Omari.
Breinert.
Omari.
Dorholt. Fitzsimmons.
Omari.
Franzen.
Tested.
Gruenhagen.
Tasted.
Johnson.
Omari.
Lien.
Tasted.
Nornis.
Tasted.
Norton.
Omari.
Poppy.
Tested.
Rosenthal.
Omari.
Swedzinski.
Tasted.
Teese.
Omari.
Winkler.
Omari.
Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, in the House, Abdul Omari received 9 votes. Christopher Tasted received 6 votes. In the Senate, Abdul Omari received 9 votes. Christopher Tasted received 4 votes.
Congratulations, Mr. Omari. Thank you to all of you. Wow. So now we have our at-large candidates, and as per our informal rules, we trade off every half hour. I'll be allowing Chair Pulowski to complete the evening and hand the gavel over.
Mr. Chair,
Senator Miller.
can I make a very important announcement that I think is very fitting for tonight's occasion? I just want to announce that the Minnesota Golden Gophers beat the #1 ranked Indiana Hoosiers tonight, 77-73 in men's basketball.
And if we would start, please, with Ms. Cohen, and then we'll proceed alphabetically. So please identify yourself for the committee. Welcome to the committee. And everyone, again, will have 5 minutes.
Chair Pulowski, Chair Bonoff, and members of the committee. As they say, good evening and go Gophers. I'm Linda Cohen, and I'm currently the chair of the Board of Regents of the University of Minnesota, and that is a great privilege. And it is a privilege to be here with you this evening also. In the couple minutes that I have, I'd like to do 2 things. I'd like to talk about about 4 broad aspects of the university, things that I feel are important to focus on in terms of oversight. And then at the end, I'd like to just give you a little bit of personal history about why I'm so devoted to the University of Minnesota. So one of the Regents' major jobs is to have oversight and governance of the University of Minnesota. And to me, there are 4 areas that are really crucial. The first is students' success. We've heard from 3 wonderful students. In terms of, we want to look at retention rates, graduation rates, financial aspects like keeping tuition down, the amount of debt that students have, and very importantly, at the same time, look at the quality of education that the students are getting. The second important aspect, I believe, is to have top-notch teachers, researchers, innovators who can work with business, who can do research for our state, who provide an economic engine. So both students and the faculty can provide economic advantage for the state. The third area, and we've talked a lot about that tonight, is operational excellence. I believe that in our non-mission-driven activities, we need to be as efficient and prudent with our finances as possible. We need to have an HR system that does best practice and is at the top of its game. We also want to have some of our decentralized activities, technology, for instance, brought into a more central activities. And the fourth element that I feel is very important is our public trust. that if we are very prudent financially and also offer quality education besides our public engagement, we will build and maintain the public trust. I believe that I've had the experience over the past 6 years which can really help me in that governance role and have developed expertise to give scrutiny and oversight and progress to these four very important areas that warrant very close governance. And now I'd just like to tell you a touch about my personal history and my family. My mother and father were both first-generation college students, and they both came to the University of Minnesota and met each other, lucky for me, and they then graduated from the university. My husband received his medical degree from the University of Minnesota Medical School. I, as most of you know, have a PhD from the University of Minnesota. I have a brother and a son, one of our sons, who both graduated from the university. And my granddaughter, who's actually a student at the University of California, Berkeley, was here last semester at the University of Minnesota. And I like to consider that she's a fourth-generation Gopher. So it would be my great pleasure to serve another term and a great privilege, and I hope I will have your support. Thank you very much, and thank you for your time.
Mr. Johnson, welcome to the committee, and please identify yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Madam Chair, members of the Joint Higher Ed Committee and Workforce Committee. My name is Dean Johnson from Wilmer. I'm currently a member of the Board of Regents, elected the same time 6 years ago with my colleague to my right, our board chair, Linda Cohn. I have 4 brief points to bring to you this evening. First of all, an appreciation for those that elected me 6 years ago and had the opportunity to work with you as a member of the Board of Regents for a great university. One of the things that come to appreciate is the people of Minnesota perhaps don't always appreciate what this great university is about. Of 65,000 students, a $3.6 billion budget, employs well over 15,000 people. And one of the things that I have come to appreciate are respective campuses at Morris, Crookston, Duluth, Rochester, certainly St. Paul and Minneapolis, and the kind of programs and research and education that brings a great asset to our state. The second point I'd like to make, to be a regent is one of 12 members elected by the legislature to the governing board, and the word I like to use is trusteeship. You as members of the legislature, this committee, ultimately elect us to be a trustee of this great university in the matters, and what I place a high priority on is a matter of students and faculty. We must keep always in our sights that a university is about students, faculty, and researchers. Looking back over our term of office, and I said this to the Senate committee, Madam Chair, one of the best votes that at least I took, and I think it was unanimous on our board, was the hiring of President Eric Kaler. President Kaler is very bright. He listens, he visits, converses, makes a decision, and we move forward for the betterment of our state. As a regent, we are charged with tenure, matters of real estate, course offerings, awarding degrees, yes, the budget, which includes tuition. We also must remember the core principles which have been mentioned earlier tonight about teaching, research, and outreach. And Mr. Chairman, Madam Chair, this is something that I feel deeply about, these next 2 statements. And that is, regents, that we have accountability with transparency. Transparency for the legislature, the governor, and well as the public. And second of all, we do have autonomy with transparency to the public, and this accountability is very important. Briefly, my background, Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I served in this body for 28 years, serving as minority and majority leader. I've served for almost 40 years as a parish pastor in Wilmer, a congregation of 2,200 members. I've served 38 years in the Army National Guard, retiring 3 years ago with the rank of Brigadier General. I'm married to Debbie of 3 years. We both had lost our wives, and we have a son, a stepson, Jeffrey, who's a lieutenant colonel in the United States Air Force as a pilot. So finally, Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, I respectfully ask for your vote and support that I might continue as a member of the Board of Regents for the University of Minnesota. I feel passionately about this position for this reason. If we are to move forward as a state, as a society, much of it resides in education. For the betterment of our society as men and women and students move forward in matters of environment, health care, transportation, agriculture, job creation, the sciences, and realizing that many of our professional people in Minnesota and the region, doctors, nurses, veterinarians, and other professionals are trained at the University of Minnesota. So that, Mr. Chairman and Madam Chair, members of the committee, I would solicit your support and vote this evening to continue as a member at large the University of Minnesota Board of Regents, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Smith, welcome to the committee. Please identify yourself for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Dr. Kelly Smith. I'm currently the superintendent of schools in Belle Plaine, Minnesota. I'm completing my 9th year there and my 21st year as a superintendent in Minnesota school districts. I want to thank you first for the opportunity to speak with you tonight about the at-large position on the Board of Regents. I've been interested in the university since very early in my youth, and I've been interested in the Regents for the past 8 years, watching the process and actually interviewing last spring as a second Congressional District position was open as well. So I thank you for the opportunity to speak with you again today. So why am I interested in the University of Minnesota? I would like to give back to this great institution that has truly had a profound influence on my life and my family's life, starting with 4-H programs as a youth in rural Minnesota that were very instrumental in our community and county, to my undergraduate degree from the Morris campus in mathematics education, and then to my doctorate degree from the Twin Cities campus in educational leadership. I also have a brother who is a vet school graduate and a sister-in-law who is a medical school graduate. So we have paid our share of tuition to the University of Minnesota, but have received much in return for that tuition. I believe my experience as a school administrator in K-12 education is a valuable asset to bring to the school or to the Board of Regents, as the line separating secondary education and post-secondary education is truly becoming more and more blurred all the time, as we have P16 initiatives, open enrollment, PSEO options for students. We are truly becoming one system, and I think I bring some knowledge of that education system. I believe that the ongoing challenge of the university administration and board is truly finding the right balance between all of the competing demands of the overall university system. I hate to bring up a three-legged stool analogy. Perhaps you've heard plenty of three-legged stool analogies. I understand Commissioner Franz has been around talking about taxes and a three-legged stool. But I look at the university as a three-legged stool as well, with the 3 legs being the mission of the university: teaching and learning, research and discovery, and public outreach. And a key to the overall success of the university is keeping a proper balance amongst all 3 legs of that stool and providing proper service in all 3 of those areas of our mission here. I believe most people would readily agree that they want the University of Minnesota to have the best and brightest professors on staff teaching our students. We'd like to have top research faculty working to better the lives of Minnesotans and citizens across the world. And we'd like to also have outstanding public outreach arm of the university serving its citizens as well. However, all those things come with some caveats, and most people would like to see those services delivered with an affordable price in terms of student tuition, user fees, and public support through tax revenue. Finding that proper balance between cost and performance, that sweet spot, if you will, is truly the challenge facing board administration on a daily basis in all decisions that they make. And I believe I bring experience with those balancing competing demands decisions in my current role as a school superintendent. I've demonstrated that ability to balance competing demands through negotiations with various employer groups, seeking community support to upgrade facilities and provide additional operating revenue, and by working with community staff and board members to clearly demonstrate a vision of where our school district is headed and then identify what resources are needed for us to get there. I want to thank you once again for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. I feel that I have the skills and experience in balancing difficult issues that would be valuable to the Board of Regents, and I ask for your support in this process. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Members, questions? Representative Dorow.
Since I've been subject to some rather tough choices tonight, I thought I'd throw out a maybe not tough question, but in the House hearing committee, we had Mr. Fitzenreiter from the U of M respond to one of our questions, which was why did tuition go up? Why did you raise tuition? His answer was because we could. And I recognize that it's not one person's decision, but it's a national growing trend. And I was just curious as to your response, especially since two of you have been there for 6 years of rising tuition costs.
Which of you wishes to go first? Ms. Cohen?
Certainly, I don't believe that we have raised tuition because we could. There might be a slight element that we haven't been as frugal as we might have been. Certainly, we want to promote the excellence of the university, but I believe that the board and the president realize and understand that we want to be accountable for every dollar, for tuition dollars, for taxpayers' dollars, for philanthropic dollars. We want to make sure that we are spending each dollar in a responsible way. So I don't agree with the statement that we did it because we could.
Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do not agree with that statement either. Part of the budget discussions in the Board of Regents was, in fact, the historical perspective is probably about 12 to 15 years ago, the state of Minnesota legislature governor provided about 40% of our operational money, and I believe it's something in the neighborhood of 17 to 18% now. So choices have to be made, of course. You have expanded increased costs of utilities, maintaining of buildings. But I think, and I'm going to go to this question because I've sat in on some of your hearings, and both in the House and the Senate, and prompted by the Wall Street Journal article, which I think will bring about opportunities for the legislature and the governor and the regents to make some reformation. And let me be pointed about that. 2 points. One is there was some question about severance package that was passed on to past employees. The Regents, under the direction of Cohen Chair, appointed a committee, which I served on. We came back and put a new policy in place before that kind of severance package would occur in the future. It would have to be signed off by a board chair and the vice chair. Justification would have to be made. Second of all, a number of researchers was confusing by that article. It's been testified that 350 administrators were counted as administrators where in fact they were, I think, administering research grants. We need to do a better job of cleaning up our personnel file, if you will, get folks, into the right category. Finally, over the last 4 to 6 years, President Brunix, now President Kaler, most of our scholarship money has been centered on middle-income families of $40,000 to $140,000. Those that are less have, Pell Grant eligibility. Those that are more have more of their personal finances. Having said that, we need to do a better job, in my opinion, of managing the money and not, as we heard from the three students, this debt load is quite something, working 2 or 3 jobs. We need to be more sensitive to that issue, in my opinion.
Mr. Smith.
Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, in my world, if we want to raise tuition, we need to voter approval to do that. And so I take that very seriously, and I certainly believe the Board of Regents takes raising tuition very seriously. But again, I'm going to use the word I used in my comments. It's about balance. And if we are desiring to have our university programs continue to have the excellence they have and to continue to move forward, resources are needed. And I think it's the Regents and administration's job to look at all available resources and then make those decisions between reducing programs and excellence or maintaining and improving programs and offset by an increase in tuition. And ultimately, I think that was the decision that was made.
Representative Nornes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this primarily is for Mr. Smith, but I'm wondering about time commitment and if that is an issue. Since you're a superintendent, how do you factor that in as far as scheduling your time?
Sure.
Mr. Smith.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, Representative Nornes. I've been asked that question the 2 years I've been involved in this process, and it's certainly a legitimate question to ask. I am a busy person. If I lived in Bemidji, Minnesota, I would not be before you today because I think it would be an impossible task. I have a 45-minute drive to the University of Minnesota campus. I am in my 9th year in a school district that I know well. My board knows me and has endorsed me to go forward in the pursuit of this position. I know there will be some conflicts, but I'm also an empty nester with a understanding wife who realizes this is a passion of mine, and I recognize there will be some conflicts, but I think because many of the events are scheduled in advance, I can work my schedule in both places to make it work as a Board of Regents.
Representative Nornes.
That was my question.
No further questions. Seeing no further questions, Representative Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One question I've been asking all the candidates as I've been meeting with them, and I ask this because I didn't have the fortune of meeting with one of you folks previous to tonight. But my district is in Greater Minnesota, and granted, we don't have a campus right in my district. I have gotten emails from folks saying that they have concerns that the U of M doesn't pay enough attention or enough focus on the Greater Minnesota campuses. So my question is, what would you say to somebody from Greater Minnesota who has those concerns?
Ms. Cohen, we'll start with you again.
Chair Pawlowski, Chair Bonoff, members of the committee, and Representative Lean. Several things come to mind. First, the University of Minnesota is a system, and in fact, we've moved from calling our campuses coordinate campuses to its University of Minnesota system because we include all 5 campuses. All of them are very important to us. Not only that, but we have 16 extension divisions and 21 research and outreach places so that we're spread over the state. And in addition to that, I just looked at a map from the medical school and or the academic health center, and it had over 100 dots on it where we have, I think, veterinarians, dentists, pharmacy students, medical students, nurses in training over the entire state. So, and we have one president who is president of the University of Minnesota system, which is also a cost saver. We don't have a separate chancellor at the University of Minnesota, so that we really are trying to build it as a statewide system.
Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Couple points. One, when someone graduates from the University of Minnesota, and one of the privileges and honors we have is to grant diplomas at the various campuses, and it does not say University of Minnesota Crookston, University of Minnesota Duluth. It says University of Minnesota. So they are treated equally. Second of all, as chair of the Facilities and Operations Committee, we have 29 million square feet of facilities. We work very hard to spread the resources around all of Minnesota. Case in point, Crookston, a new dormitory was built. One is online, a new recreation facility. Case in point, Rochester campus, we're about to make some expansions in Rochester, same way in Duluth. Chair Cohn has talked about extension. In a parochial way, we, out in Wilmer where I live, we have the poultry testing lab. We have a new research facility. We have a dental lab operated by the University of Minnesota, same as in Hibbing. We see it as a statewide educational system, and we work hard, very hard on the board to be fair and equitable.
Mr. Smith.
Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, Representative Lean, being a Morris graduate, back in the day it did say Morris on my diploma, and I'm glad to see that's a change because I do think the university has tried to make it one system. And I think this question goes back a little bit to a question of one, the earlier groups here about perhaps changing the format of these campuses in rural Minnesota, and I guess personally I'm against changing that format. I think we have specific areas of expertise in the campuses right now that students look to and that serve those areas well. Morris, for example, obviously is an energy research institute and a green institution, and working in research in those areas, as already has been brought up, I think sometimes the university does not communicate well enough the variety of research labs and other programs that are in rural Minnesota. In my area, they just started a partnership with the New Sweden Dairy, where the vet school has a separate facility right at that dairy for training purposes. I'm sure not many people know about that, even in my community, which is 15 miles away from that facility. So I do think there is representation. It's great that we have rural campuses that are serving those areas, and certainly the labs as well.
Representative Lean, is that?
No, thank you.
Further questions? Seeing no further questions, we're going to go for a roll call, but this is going to be a little different. You're going. I'm sorry, Representative Norton. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just had a question for the chair, not for the candidates, and that was, we have a number of other candidates who applied for positions who also checked at large. Are those individuals also available to be nominated at this time, or only the three in front of us now?
Representative Norton, nominations were closed. At the beginning of the meeting, nominations were closed when I asked for more nominations. So.
Mr. Chair.
Pardon?
Mr. Chair, I think that, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the nominations that we closed at the beginning of the meetings were any candidates that were not before us tonight, but I believe any of the candidates we heard from tonight are also eligible to be nominated for the at-large position.
If that is Representative Norton's question, yes, that would be correct.
So can I clarify again, since I apparently wasn't clear? We have had a group this evening in 3 different interview groups, and many of them had checked at large.
Yes, that's correct.
And so I'm asking if those candidates as well are available for these at-large positions, and if so, and you can give the directions, but we can choose from any of the at-large candidates available, that's what I'm trying to ask.
That would be correct, Representative.
Thank you.
That's correct.
Mr. Chair, just to be clear, I could be wrong, but I don't think they necessarily would have had to mark at large. I think it's any of the candidates that we heard from tonight are eligible for any of the positions that they're qualified for. So obviously the student position is done, but we couldn't nominate a non-student to the student position. But This being at-large, I think any of the members we heard from are eligible for the at-large.
Members, I'm going to read number 3. If you have your rules before you, each person recommended by the Regent Candidate Advisory Council is eligible to be interviewed by the Joint Committee and considered nominated for any position for which they are eligible. So, members, we're still going to go to a roll call, and I'm going to ask that you give us 2 names. And again, if they're nominated, you could give us a name other than the 3 that are in front of us. So I'm going to ask that you do this relatively slowly and clearly so that we can make sure that we get your vote recorded accurately. So the clerk will take the roll, and you're giving us 2 names. Senator Ortman.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, can you explain to us how the votes will be counted? Does each candidate need to have a majority, again, from both houses and a majority of the total in order to get a nomination?
Senator Ortman, that would be correct.
And, Mr. Chair, are we required to vote for 2?
Senator Ortman, I would say, no, you can abstain on one. That would be acceptable. You could abstain on both, if you wish. Question. Representative Gruenhagen.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. So if you wanted to nominate one of the previous candidates, is now the time to do that? And I understand you need... Oh, you just vote.
Representative Gruenhagen and everyone, all you would need to do is say their name.
Okay.
So it would just be the name of the individual, and I would hope you would use, the last name might be the easiest here to record. You could give the whole name, but just so we can clearly hear you, you can give only 2, or 1, or none. Are we all right so far? Senator Miller, you okay?
Mr. Chair, I think you've explained it very well.
And Representative Norton looks like she's smiling. So the clerk will take the roll.
Bonoff.
Cohen Johnson.
Clausen.
Cohen, Johnson.
Eakin.
Cohen, Johnson.
Fishbach.
Johnson Smith.
Kent.
Cohen Johnson.
Lori.
Cohen, Johnson.
Miller.
Cohen, Johnson.
Ortman.
Cohen Johnson.
Peterson. Pratt.
Johnson Smith.
Sharon.
Cohen Johnson.
Sparks.
Johnson.
Torres Ray.
Cohen Johnson.
Pulowski.
Cohen Johnson.
Breinert.
Cohen Johnson.
Dorholt. Can you repeat for clarification?
Cohen Johnson.
Fitzsimmons.
Cohen, Johnson.
Franzen.
Cohen Johnson.
Gruenhagen.
Smith and Wesson. I mean... What committee am I on? No. Smith and Wynn.
Did the clerk get the... All right.
Not to be different, but just...
Johnson.
Cohen, Johnson.
Lean.
Johnson Smith.
Nornis.
Johnson Smith.
Norton.
Tusku Smith.
Poppy.
Tushu.
Rosenthal. Swedzinski.
Johnson.
Teese.
Johnson Smith.
Winkler. Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, in the House, Linda Cohen received 6 votes. Dean Johnson received 10 votes. Tuzku received 4 votes. Nguyen received 1 vote. Smith received 6 votes. In the Senate,
Would you repeat that?
Yes.
Just a little more slowly, please.
Yep. In the House, Cohen received 6 votes. Johnson received 10 votes. Tuzku received 4 votes. Nguyen received 1 vote. Smith received 6 votes.
We've got a conflict here.
Smith has 5 votes, excuse me.
All right, so we've got a correction. Smith has 5 votes.
Yep.
Go with the Senate.
Yep. In the Senate, Cohen received 9 votes. Johnson received 12 votes. Smith received 2 votes.
All right, for clarification, congratulations, Mr. Johnson. You have been elected, and we're going to take another vote, and this vote, you will be voting for only one candidate. And all of the rest of it would hold true. If you wish to go to another nominated candidate that was nominated this evening, you would be appropriate to do that. So, Mr. Johnson, thank you, and you're excused.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I appreciate it very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Representative Poppy.
I do have a question, Mr. Chair. Will either of the low votes, any of the low votes, be taken out of consideration, or is it?
Representative Poppy, if we did, when would be the low one with 1 in the dropout? Mr. Gehring, I'm going to let Mr. Gehring explain. So, Mr. Gehring.
Mr. Chair, rule number 10 of the rules that are governing the committee process this evening says if there are more than 2 nominees for the vacancy and none receives the necessary votes to be recommended to the joint convention, the nominee receiving the fewest total votes cast by the Senate and House members shall be eliminated, and the process will be continued until a nominee receives the necessary votes. So in this case, Mr. Chair, I believe Mr. Nguyen received the fewest number of votes.
So he would be
eliminated.
But, Mr. Chair?
Senator Fishbach.
Mr. Chair, I'm just curious because it says, and none receives the necessary votes to be recommended. So Mr. Johnson, Regent Johnson, received it. So
did not.
But so you've got an issue there because this reads that if none receives it, and in this case, at least 1 did.
I would rule they're all in. They would all be in again. So we'll go one more time. You're only voting for 1. Clerk will take the roll.
Bonoff.
Cohen.
Clausen.
Cohen.
Eakin.
Cohen.
Fishbach.
Smith.
Kent.
Cohen.
Lori.
Cohen.
Miller.
Cohen.
Ortman.
Pass.
Peterson. Pratt.
Smith.
Sharon.
Cohen.
Sparks.
Pass.
Torres Ray.
Cohen.
Pulowski.
Cohen.
Breinert.
Cohen.
Dorholt.
Cohen.
Fitzsimmons.
Cohen.
Franzen.
Smith.
Gruenhagen.
Tusku.
Johnson.
Cohen.
Lean.
Smith.
Nornis.
Smith.
Norton.
Tusco.
Poppy.
Pass.
Rosenthal. Swedzinski.
Tusco.
Teese.
Smith.
Winkler.
Mr. Chair, Madam Chair,
Representative Poppy.
I'd like to vote for Cohen.
Representative Poppy votes for Cohen.
Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, in the House, Linda Cohen received 7 votes. Kelly Smith received 4 votes. And Arturo Tuscu received 3 votes. In the Senate, Linda Cohen received 8 votes. Kelly Smith received 2 votes.
No one, we did not have the required majority in both bodies, so we're going to take another ballot. Candidates would remain in. We're going to go again. Clerk will take the roll. We're under roll call. We're under roll call.
Bonoff.
Cohen.
Clausen.
Cohen.
Eakin.
Cohen.
Fishbach.
Smith.
Kent.
Cohen.
Laurie.
Cohen.
Miller.
Tusu.
Ortman.
Pass.
Peterson. Pratt.
Smith.
Sharon.
Cohen.
Sparks.
Cohen.
Torres Ray.
Cohen.
Pulowski.
Cohen.
Breinert.
Cohen.
Dorholt.
Cohen.
Fitzsimmons.
Cohen.
Franzen.
Smith.
Gruenhagen.
Tusku.
Johnson.
Cohen.
Lean.
Smith.
Nornis.
Cohen.
Norton.
Tusco.
Poppy.
Cohen.
Rosenthal.
Cohen.
Swedzinski.
Cohen.
Teese.
Smith.
Winkler. Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, in the House, Linda Cohen received 9 votes. Kelly Smith received 3 votes. Arturo Tuscu received 2 votes. In the Senate, Linda Cohen received 8 votes. Kelly Smith received 2 votes. Arturo Tuscu received 1 vote.
Having received the majorities in both bodies, congratulations, Ms. Cohen and Mr. Smith. Thank you again, and it isn't over till the joint convention meets on the floor. So. I want to thank Senator Bonoff and also all of the Senate staff and all of you for being very patient tonight, and we will see you in the joint convention. Meeting is adjourned.